Thomas Healy, welcome to Creator and Conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
With the surname Healy, I have to ask if there's any Irish connection at all, any Irish
Uh, th
blood in the family.
there is, yeah, in County Cork is
Ah,
where it was my father's side of the family came from.
oh, you know what? Actually, in October, the guys behind Dublin Comic Con have just started. It happened last year, Cork Comic Con. It's actually going to be in its second year beginning, so I'll have to drop your name to them because definitely, if anyone should be at a Cork Comic Con.
Oh, please, please do. I've been wanting to get there for not specifically to Cork Comic Con, but for Dublin Con a couple of years now, and I've got a couple of friends over there, Kevin Keane, Reese Hannigan, Roy McConville. They're always like, "You got to get over. You've got to get over to Ireland." And we've got such a big kind of quiver of Irish artists now that we're working with, both writing and an art style. I think it would be a really great meetup for a lot of the Spawn fans over there.
Oh, brilliant. No,
So yes,
absolutely.
please drop my name.
Yeah, yeah, 100% guaranteed. And so I suppose what's just to begin with, your editor-in-chief then, working with on the Spawn line of comics, how does one arrive at that destination, as it were? Like, were you always aiming towards working within the field of comic books, or is this something that you graduated into? What's your pathway
Yeah.
into industry?
I've told this story a few times, and it always, excuse my language, pisses off a couple of people. Um, because everybody thinks that there's this hard and fast way to get into the industry, and there really isn't. I've always wanted to be a writer. That was the big thing. So I've been writing since high school. Really bad goth poetry in the '90s after watching The Crow, and just all kinds of stuff. I was working in hospice for a while, which is kind of an odd career for someone that wanted to be a writer, but I ended up there. I really enjoyed the work, but I needed some time away from that. If you're familiar with what hospice is,
Mm.
it's caring for people that are end of life. And I needed some time away, and I took over managing a local comic shop for a couple of months. And then I had a friend who worked for Todd McFarlane, and she was the publishing coordinator. And that is a really kind of boring job. You're like the air traffic controller for just managing the files. So you make sure that the script gets to the artist, and the artist's pencils get to the inker, and the inks get to the colorist, and it's just managing all of that. It was very cool because I got to meet and interact with all of the creative teams. So I got to know a lot of incredible artists. And she was moving up to a different position there within the company, and basically TMP is Todd McFarlane Productions is a very small company. And so Todd said, "Hey, you know what the job entails. Find your own replacement, and then you can start this new position." So she literally called me up at work one day and said, "Hey, do you want my job?" And I said, "Yeah." So she's like, "Can you come here tomorrow?" And I went down to the offices, and I had on a suit, and I had my resume. And this dude with no shoes on walks into the lobby, and he just walks up to me and goes, "Hey, I'm Todd McFarlane. Let's go to my office." And then he looked at his office, and it was a mess. It looked like a bomb went off. And he goes, "Let's go into Shannon's office," because she was the one that was leaving. And he had me sit in her chair, and he goes, "Hey, it looks good on you." And we talked for about 3 hours. And at the end of that call, he brought me into their CFO's office and was like, "Hire this guy." And that's how I got my foot in the door as the publishing coordinator. So I was the low man on the totem pole for the first couple of years there. And then the editor in chief at the time, John Goff, left, and he took over. He's doing incredible work at Bungie. He's one of the lead narrative writers for writing their new game, Marathon. And then when we decided to launch and expand the Spawn universe from the one book to four books and introducing King Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn, and the Scorched, I told Todd, I was like, "Hey, I want to be the editor in chief now, since I'm going to be managing all of the titles." And he goes, "If you can get through this year and we don't miss a single deadline and all of the books launch smoothly, I'll make you editor in chief." And so I did, and we did it. And then he called me up one day as I was taking my wife out to dinner. He goes, "Oh, by the way, I found a mistake on the latest issue of Scorched." And I go, "Oh no, what happened?" He goes, "You put the wrong title. It's supposed to be editor in chief. I fixed it for you." And that was literally how I found out that I got the job.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
that's brilliant. Uh,
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing people's stories on how they got into the industry. I believe it was Kurt Busiek years and years ago said every time somebody figures out a way to break into the comic book industry, the industry makes sure that it seals up the hole behind them, because there very few stories are the same. everybody's got a different kind of way that they got in.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. I think CB Cebulski said something similar as well, and he was like, "It's like breaking out of prison," because when one
Mm-hmm.
so they find out, hey, they see it just exactly as Kurt was saying. And so I just wondering, like, your job must be so deadline orientated because this is something like funnily enough obviously my career is two sides, teaching and publishing, and when I was a student I was like, when I finished my last exam, I don't want to do anything that's deadline orientated again, and I move into perhaps the most deadline orientated industry possible. But for yourself, how do you like juggle it all then? What's your preferred method? Are you a spreadsheet based person? Do you use like a virtual Slack? Are you old school with whiteboards as well and such? Like, is there, oh,
I
there we
carry
go.
a notebook everywhere I go. I do not ever not have a notebook, and I just keep everything in that. I keep all my thoughts. And the other big thing is I surround myself with really, really good people. Um, when I moved up to editor in chief, the first thing I did was hire Yvette Artiaga, and you'll see her name in every book and every trade as the publishing coordinator. This was the fourth job I have hired her at. I've hired her for four different jobs because I love working with her, and I know she's exceptional at what she does. And then my three production artists, Ryan, Zabriel, and Amani, they kind of keep the engine running on all of those books on a week by week basis. As those colored pages come in, as those inks come in, they're making sure they've already started building those InDesign files. So our weeks now look like, since we have more than four books presently, we're currently publishing eight. We don't have a week where a book isn't going to press. We try not to do too many because I've only got three production artists. So at max, we have three books a week. But basically, every single Monday, it's a book is starting to go to press. We start building those files. Hopefully, the letterers all had the scripts by Friday of the week prior, and we start building. And by Wednesday, hopefully, we've got that first round of PDFs to review. And then I just start reading through everything. I usually have them try to read through as well as they're doing stuff, because the more pair of eyes you get on a book like that, especially when you're doing multiple a week and there's no weeks off, we read so many words. There's just a lot. There's a lot to check. And then it's managing the continuity stuff, because not every writer talks to the other writers. So that's a big part of it as well. Just maintaining the correctness of the universe.
And so like, so there's a lot of, it seems to be that there's one half or one part the mythology and the story, then one part production as well on top of it. So you're
Mm-hmm.
in between that as well. Do you split up your working week or day in that regard? Like where you go, okay, this portion is reserved solely for speaking with the creators, focusing on story, and then the rest of the day is like, okay, let's check proof the PDFs and handle the production side. Is that how you juggle it, or do you do it by days? Or
No, absolutely. Yeah. I usually split it up. For me, I usually split it up by days.
Mhm.
Monday, Tuesday is usually the days I'm meeting with everybody. Where are we at? Do we have, is anybody late for anything? Do I need to? Because sometimes, they're going to be bugging an artist, or they might be bugging the letterer. But it gets a little bit more serious if I have to shoot the email out and be like, hey, just checking in on those inks that you told Yvette that you were going to have last Friday. So sometimes I have to make those calls or those emails. So it's really kind of touching base with my team and seeing where we're at, because we want to make sure that by Thursday we have a complete product that we can upload to the printer. We need to be there by Friday. That's what our printer needs, because they set everything up on Friday. FOC comes in over the weekend. We set the print run on Monday, and then we're off to the races. So we don't want to have any delays in that. So making sure that we get as much done by Thursday morning is what our goal is. It doesn't always happen, but that's our goal. So Monday, Tuesdays, I do a lot of that. Wednesday is usually the day that if I can, I'll set up meetings with most of the writers to talk about stuff if they need to. Um, we try to do kind of like a monthly meeting with all of the writers, in the same vein that Marvel used to do, like the Marvel Writer Summit. Um, but we just do it monthly on Zoom like this, and try to discuss kind of where's everybody going, who's using what characters, if there's any new projects or mini series, making sure that they don't kind of step or break anything from previous stuff. And then as a writer of some of the books, I do some of my writing and some of my outlining on Wednesdays, but I do the most heavy lifting of my writing. I like doing that on the weekends. My wife and I like to get up a little early. We head out to a coffee shop, put some headphones in, and I can just sit and kind of and finish and work on my plots and scripts for various projects.
That's amazing. And obviously, being a writer as well as walking into the production, like it's great to have that affinity then with the process because you're literally walking in the same shoes then. So you know as well, getting across. It's always great to have that shared insight. You mentioned just there as well, like we're talking right now via Zoom, and a lot of production meetings take place in Zoom. And prior to the academy, I was teaching in animation and the animation pipeline, and it's just been transformative since lockdown, how this new communication tool has come into everyone's lives, and even particularly now in comics, so much has changed from a technology and tool-based process. It's been very positive from communication. I think now everyone can connect with anyone now at this stage, which can be a positive and a negative, I suppose. But also, the tools that are being used, you mentioned InDesign and that you export the PDF into production as well. Is there been any major changed in terms of the tools that have been used, or if anyone's listening and considering, to work professionally, is there any particular software package or piece of hardware like a scanner and such that you'd be recommending they should be considering investing or saving for right now and be proficient in? Or is it still whatever works best for them as long as it can be scanned and sent?
Yeah, I think for doing, I think that there's two sides to that coin. For those that want to create their own comics and then maybe work with a publisher, whether they be a tiny publisher themselves. I mean, anybody, and this is how I started. Anybody can draw stuff out, print it out at a print shop or Kinko's or Office Max or whatever they have in Ireland, and staple it themselves. And you make your little zine style comics. We all started that way. Um, as far as as far as making your own stuff, I think work with whatever works for you. Jason Sean Alexander was one of the artists that is pretty well regarded as one of the great Spawn artists. And he was the artist that was on the book when I started. And I heard a story from Todd once because in the office, we have this giant painting. It's about 4 feet by 6 feet. And it's
Okay.
of the character's Cyan, and it's just her headshot. It was a cover. And I looked at it one day and I was like, wow, I didn't realize how big that was. He goes, yeah, let me tell you a story. Like we hired Jason and we knew he was a painter. He did fine art, but he was also an illustrator and he had done some self-published stuff, like Empty Zone through Image. Most recently, he's been working with Rodney Barnes on Philadelphia, the vampire story from Image Comics. So if you're familiar with that, you know that style. Diego knows what I'm talking about. Beautiful style, an absolutely incredible gem of a person. But Todd was telling me that when he first got him on Spawn, it was like his first regular comic gig. So he was getting a little bit late. And one day, Todd actually, I guess, went to his studio and he saw he was not doing his pages on 11 by 17. He was still painting them on full size canvases. And Todd's going, what are you doing? It's taking you so much time because this canvas is like 4 feet by 6 feet. You don't need to make them this big. So he had to learn kind of his own process and a new style. He still does them very large. Liam Sharp, who does Dark Ages, well known for Conan, also works on oversized sheets of paper. He's doing like 22 by 18, and he just likes working big. But again, that takes up a lot of time. So finding the process for you as an artist, I feel, is the best. Don't lean into, well, the industry uses Bristol board and this type of ink. Who cares? There are beautiful books that come out. Department of Truth does not look like that's done on normal paper. I love the interior of that book. So do what works best for you. If you're interested in getting into the production side because you want to work for a company like Marvel, DC, or Image and something like that, I was surprised. I got invited to be on the board for a local community college chain out here in Phoenix, and we were talking about the tools that they should be teaching. And obviously, everyone teaches Photoshop. But and they did some Illustrator stuff, but I was amazed that this was a comic art program and they were not teaching InDesign. And I said, well, how are you teaching people to publish their stuff? And they really didn't have an answer for that. And so to me, if you're looking to get into someone and be like a production artist that works for a comic book company, or I mean, even a game company, you still need to know InDesign because that's your publishing platform. That's the platform that needs to go. And I hope you can, I mean, and most people, you can find courses online that are free and just follow YouTube videos or stuff. So you'll get the basics of it. But without that, you're not making a comic book in the present industry. You need to learn that.
Yeah, no, and it's PDF Expo, and it's crazy now at this point. Recording, it's more to animation, but Adobe turned around now and said that they've stopped with Adobe Animate. They're going to discontinue as well, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
whole whole pipelines and people trained in it is this been changed overnight. But as you were saying, the
Hmm.
YouTube has become such a valuable tool now, just for like if you want to learn something, it's available, and there's more tools now becoming available to be able to use and to choose from as well. But one of the most disruptive elements as well, to the industry has been the conversation around AI as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's, I'm no expert in the field. I'm not going to even pretend to dip my toe in there and pretend that I can advise on it. But it seems to be that it can be a useful tool from a data-driven point of view, like crunching the numbers, and particularly in medicine and other infrastructure side. But from the creative and the art side, it seems very, very soulless within it as well. As an editor within the industry, have you been privy to much of the conversation, or is it something that you've just been like, it's not concerning us right now, or has any of this been brought to your attention,
Oh no,
either positive or negative?
this is very much in discussion within the industry. It is a very very polarizing thing. There's a lot of people, rightfully so, trying to break into the industry, and they are saying, well, this is a tool I can use. And then there were a lot of established artists going, but that's not your art, then that's not you. Right now, we without, I mean, unless it's unknown to us in some way, we are not using AI for anything. I believe Marvel and DC have made similar statements that they are currently not doing that. Obviously, there's always the scandal of random artists being caught using, or accused of being using, and I try to follow that news. I try to me help me make informed decisions when we're looking at new artists and stuff, because we are in that world now. We're in that
Mm.
world where if we get a portfolio from someone that's really really good, you got to do the Google search. You have to find out. And I'm not looking to say we're canceling anybody, but we also want to be affiliated with people that we agree with and that are not saying polarizing or horrible things online. And we've had that happen where you got to go, oh, this is somebody that's involved in this particular group. Oh, they're not people that we want representing our book, our universe, our company. And
Yeah.
we will do and make those decisions like that. But yeah, I don't really foresee that being something that we want to utilize in our product. I, I I look at it and go, if we wanted to create robots that were thinking in machines, have them do the lawn work. Why are they writing poetry? Why are they making movies? They're supposed to be doing the hard work so we have time to create as humans, not the other way around. Um, I mean, and it's even a situation here within Phoenix, which is, if you're unaware, a desert. It's a dry desert, and they want to build a data center out in the suburbs of Phoenix, and it's like, we already have a drought. Where are you getting you're taking our water? Like, that's for the people that live here, but it's cheap land and they want to do it. So there's a lot of fighting with the community out here going, no, we don't want this. We don't want this coming into our community.
Oh my God, that sounds like Silent Green meets the Terminator situation going
Yes.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Oh my
I,
God.
I see it every day. I wish, and I hope this doesn't sound like cowardice. I wish I could be more vocal
Mm.
publicly and online. Having a conversation like this is great, but I can't make an Instagram post or jump into the comments section of a Reddit post and flame somebody because of it, simply because I have to represent Todd and the company and stuff. But luckily, I have a ton of incredible artists that I work with, that work for us and work in the Spawn universe, that have carried that torch, because they don't have to worry about it, because they know I'm not going to fire them if they do, and so they get to kind of rally the people against it.
I know, absolutely. And the fact that you bring up their social media as well, that's the other major factor, like in 24th century comics, because everyone has to have like an online presence just purely just to promote. Like part of it could be to network and be contactable, but the other is just to promote, make people aware that your book's coming out. A friend of mine, David Leach, is a senior editor over in Titan Comics, and he was saying that for them, it is a consideration, the online following that people have when considering when it comes to like work and stuff, because the possibility of a built-in audience and conversion. Has that ever been anything that's been a consideration from your point of view as an editor, that this particular person, if we hire, could bring with them an audience? I'm not saying like it's a mandatory factor, but does that in any way like swing a decision when it comes towards the work?
I completely understand David's position on that.
Mhm.
But for TMP, it's 100% no. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna tell you why, and I'll give you examples. I will get texts or direct messages from Todd at 3 o'clock in the morning on Instagram because he will just do a hashtag search for comic book art. And he likes to just scroll and scroll and scroll. And he'll find some guy and he'll be like, this guy is great. And then I'll get the direct message, check this guy out. Let's reach out to him. And he'll go, he's only got 1,200 followers. Nobody's discovered him yet. Like, we want this guy. He's the next big thing. Because I mean, Todd was there. He had to work. His first book was Coyote. Then he worked on JSA, and everyone knows him from Spider-Man. But he did a lot of the stuff that nobody cared about, and he put in the effort. And whether he owns and he's the president of Image or he's the CEO of TMP, he is still an artist first and foremost. And he gets a real big kick about discovering somebody that has not broken into the comic book world and going, now we're going to work with you. And I love it too when I got people like Kevin Keane, Raymond Gay, Jeff Monk. These are guys that did not have big followers or big careers, and when I get to see that we gave them covers, and then all of a sudden, Raymond's doing stuff for Wildstorm and Kevin's doing covers for this company over here, and going, hey, I'm glad I mean, they're getting work. Like, these are all people I like. These are all people I love working with. So I'm glad that we can be maybe just one step in the ladder of their career. So yeah, so Todd's very much not interested in that. Um, I, on the other hand, um, don't necessarily look at that, but I do, and I can understand and appreciate the value of working with somebody that does have a following. When we were planning our Western book, The Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger Spawn, set in the Old West, the first person I thought of was Jimmy Palmiotti. The man is arguably the best Western comics writer in the business today, because I don't think anybody else present in the industry could literally do 127 consecutive issues of a Jonah Hex title. Jonah Hex just does not sell, but Jimmy Palmiotti writing Jonah Hex is something special. So we did go to him for that. And then for the most part, if you see some of the larger names that we've got, like we've got Gail Simone doing a She Spawn story, nothing to do with her following. It was because I was a fan. And I ran into her at a con and I said, I would love to work with you because I love your Birds of Prey and I loved Secret Six. Can you do something? And so a lot of times when you see some of those creators coming on board for their short stints, it's simply because we're fans of their work and we want to work with them.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really, really endearing and like just brilliant to hear as well. Because you know yourself, the industry can be very isolating, and
Mm.
particularly when you're beginning, people like you're walking in a vacuum, then you put it out, and sometimes it's like again, no reaction is the worst reaction, like because you're like, is it a message in a bottle going out? And then to know that people like Todd are still like passionate, they're fans as well, and going out and searching and keeping a finger to the pulse of what's happening. That's going to be very motivational for many people to hear as well. And it sounds as if like yourself, you were saying like you're a fan as well. It sounds like Todd's a fan. That must be brilliant that you're doing something that you love. Is there any like great fan moments you've had in your career where you're like, pinch me, this is an amazing opportunity that you never thought you'd be in when you were like first reading comics, say, and now you're there active within the industry?
No, a ton, a ton. I've been working with Todd for about 8 years now, and every couple of months something exceptional happens. And one day we were there, and Todd asked me, he's like, "Hey, can you stay a little late today?" And I said, "Sure, sure, sure." He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have a visitor. Frank Miller's in town." So Frank Miller was doing, because they did that documentary about Frank Miller, and they were showing it at the fancy movie theater over in Phoenix, and they wanted Todd to do kind of like a little speech beforehand. It was one of the first stops for the documentary. So Frank Miller and all his entourage came into town, and they came into the office, and they were very clear to, like, they kind of gave a little bit of a speech like, hey, Frank's not signing for any of the staff. Like, he's just kind of here to chill out with Todd. Please don't take pictures with your phones and stuff like that. It's not an official meet and greet. He's just coming into the office. But again, Todd's office is always a mess. So they ended up hanging out in my office, and I had my original, like, just beat up copy of the Spawn Batman book from the 90s. And I said, hey, I know you're not supposed to sign anything, but Frank, can I just get, I mean, this is my copy. This is not going to get sent to CGC for 9.8. Like, I'm not even going to, I'm just going to bag and board this. Can you just sign my copy? And he was like, I would absolutely love to. And he signed it in like that really nice green paint pen.
Oh,
And then he goes,
brilliant.
"Do you want me to personalize it?" I go, "Absolutely, because I'm never getting rid of this." And he signed it. And then it was literally the first time I had ever asked Todd for something. I'm like, "Todd, if he signs it, I need you to sign it." So I have that signed in a photo of the three of us hanging in my office. And that was like one of those times where I was just like, wow, like this guy just walks into the office. And then walking through a show like San Diego Comic Con or New York Comic Con, and having a creator that I know that I followed for years walk up to me going, "You're Thomas Healy, right? I've been wanting to talk to you." I'm like, "Wait, what, how do you know who I am?" Can we grab a drink tonight, or can we get lunch or something like that? And it's been really, really, really good. But but Frank Miller's, I mean, he's amazing.
Amazing.
So that would probably be my big one.
That's awesome. And you were saying you're working with Todd for 8 years now. Like, I've bumped into him a couple of times, usually at New York Comic Con, and he's very polite. Like, he's the nicest guy on the planet. Like, from a fan when a fan meet and greet.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also like Todd the legend when you see him in interviews, and he seems like to be the consummate professional but businessman and showman as well. When you were going in for that first like job interview, saying you were suited and booted, did you have any kind of no fears or anxieties about who Todd was? Like now that you've got to work, you got to know the man behind the name. Has it? Do you ever look back going, that they were silly that I thought he'd be like that, and he's completely different? Seems to be like you're two,
Oh yeah,
very much on the same wavelength, as it were.
very much so. I always say I wish people knew the Todd. That's the Todd of The Office. That's the Todd of our Christmas party. Because he is so genuinely a nice person, and he so genuinely cares for all of the staff. Like he's the guy, he's the boss that when the Christmas party, he makes sure to sit at every table and he's asking, "How's your kids? Or weren't they in volleyball now? Or is your mom still doing okay? Or how you moved? Where's the new house?" Like he knows, he cares. He's not just the CEO that says, "Hey everybody, the bar's open, drinks are on us, have a good night." Um, but yes, there is Todd the showman, and when I first got the job, my wife was she knew who he was peripherally. She's
Mhm.
not a comic book fan, but she was doing some searches, and she found the interview he did for a series called Blueprints. And it's about an hour long, and they had filmed it right before I started there. And she watched that, and she actually came through. She goes, "He's such an interesting person." I'm like, "I know, like you don't know the half of it." But yeah, him at cons and him interacting with the fans, not necessarily doing the panels, but when he's just doing one-on-one, doing the signing, he really appreciates the fans being there. That's not, I mean, we don't, he doesn't charge for his signature. That really is him wanting to, if he could spend 5 or 10 minutes with every single fan, he would. Unfortunately, he can't. And for most shows, they are very, very strict with how and when he can sign. Even San Diego, we got in trouble a couple of years ago because we were doing signings at the booth on the floor, and the line was just so long, it was just affecting everything. And security with police came up and said, "This is done. We're ending you right now." That's why we have the signing rooms upstairs for the big celebrity signings. He has to go up there. Um, but yeah, he is incredible, and he knows he really appreciates everything the fans done, because without the fan base of Spawn does not break the world record, and it's not continually running. And we just put issue 373 to the printer, and people ask all the time, it's like, "Well, is he going to start with a new number one? Are you going to reboot the series?" And I go, "No, because he doesn't want to lose the world record. Every new issue adds to it. Nobody's ever going to beat that." How many times has Marvel and DC rebooted things, but then they still want the fancy numbers. Then they'll change the number back for a couple of months when they get to close to a 600 or a 700, but then they relaunch it again. And he's never going to do that. And we're just going to
No.
keep it. But he is truthfully a wonderful human.
I know. That's amazing to hear. It's always wonderful when you appreciate someone's work and then you can hear, from the folks around them that, yeah, this is the real deal. That's awesome. And again,
But
as you were saying,
that is the fun. I just want to interrupt. That is the funny thing when when he hired me, he said, "So were you there? Did you read Spawn from the beginning?" And I go, "I remember the day it came out. My buddy Billy Petruzowitz and I went to Bailey's Comics out on Long Island. I was living in New York at the time, and we saw Spawn #1, and I picked it up, and the paper was different. Most of the other comics were still using the newsprint, and Image was using the really glossy paper and beautiful colors. And I looked at it and went, this looked good. And then I looked on the cover and I went, $1.95? Screw that. Who's spending $1.95 on comics? This is dumb." And I didn't buy it. And then Whilce Portacio, one of the other Image founders, put out Wetworks, and that was my jam. And I loved Wetworks. So I've told Todd, I was like, yeah, I wasn't really a Spawn fan. I liked Whilce's stuff way better. I liked Wetworks more. I didn't jump on the Spawn till much later. And he laughs. And I have gotten to talk to Whilce and I tell him that. He also he high-fived me for that. So
That's brilliant. I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Wills actually set up his own school as well in the Philippines. I think.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because often we had a visit from the Joe Kubert school here last year as well, and often the other names when you look up comic schools, but then Wills as well had his. And I think I'm blanking now, but there's a few folks who managed. I think Lenel Yu might have actually got to start with that school as well. So it's been.
That sounds right. And I'm working with, I don't know if you went to that school or it was affiliate, but I'm working with Von Randall right now as an interior artist on my Salmon Twitch run. And we just started doing covers with Harvey Tolabao, who is incredible. And they're both from the Philippines. And this year I will be at the Super Manila Con in the
Oh.
Philippines in September. So I'm excited to go there for the first time.
That sounds wonderful,
Yeah.
amazing. I'm just going to ask this. This is another question from me, just around process. Then I'm going to throw out to some of the students and members here as well, who have their questions they wouldn't mind asking. But I was just wondering, as a writer, then, just your own personal process. Then you were saying that you kind of like the weekends, taking the time to write as well. Are you pen and paper or typing? You showed your notebook, so I'm guessing you
Hmm.
do a lot of handwritten. But
Yeah.
do you do breakdowns or layouts or thumbnails as well? Are you more of a purely written communicator, or do you do like visual, or it depends on the collaborator that you're working with?
I truly, I've been lucky to really just trust the artists I've worked with.
Hmm.
So when I'm writing, when I came up with Black Ritual, Nat Jones came up to us, who's another older Spawn artist, and said, "Hey, I want to do a book about Nyx, and she's the witch of the universe." We both kind of have an interest in the occult and stuff. So I said, "This is going to be a perfect fit." So I kind of solidified that process because Todd, as an artist, he is very fond of the Marvel method, which is loose plots. The writers only give loose plots to the artist, and the artist is left to interpret what that is. Now, the plot might say, "Give me a 2-page spread here," but the plot typically is not going to do panel breakdowns. It's just this is what happens. So that's kind of my process right now. Is I like to write out the full issue in prose as if I'm writing a short story. I'll put in bits of dialogue, character stuff, and I'll just write it out. And then I'll let that usually stew it for a day or so. Then I'll pull that into Word, and so I might write that out on paper, or I might write that out on a laptop. But then I'll pull it into Word, and then I'll break it into scenes. So there's 3 scenes in this issue, 3 different locations, 3 scenes, and then from there I'll break that into pages. And then so my plots, when I send those off to Vaughn, or when I was sending those off to Nat, are very similar. Say, page 1, Sam and Twitch are outside the crime scene. I'd like to see some crime scene tape around the houses. They're going to be talking for a bit. So give me 2 or 3 panels of good size room above their heads. And then they draw their guns, and then they go into and enter the house. So that's literally might be the only direction I give on page 1 is that those 3 or 4 sentences. Sometimes I'll put some reference, especially if my artist is not living in the country. I'll put reference for New York City, or what a New York City apartment looks like, that kind of thing. But that's really it. And sometimes I will put dialogue too, but I don't put all of the dialogue there, because I will let them do it. But I want to know, oh, this is an argument, or Sam's getting frustrated. So the dialogue lines will let them know, okay, this will, to match the facial expressions a little bit.
Awesome.
But that's really my process. So it's kind of like 3 steps of breaking it down, and that usually takes me 2 weeks to kind of write a full issue. And then once we get the art back, that is when I then script it. So I've already got a bunch of dialogue I know I want to fit in, and I want to use. Sometimes I have to change it because the page just can't support that much talking head. Or sometimes I go, oh, I've got a lot more room here. I can expand on this idea and I'm going to move it from the second half of this issue to the first half. So I can do something different in the second half. And that's when I do it. So that process is not necessarily used by everybody. Jimmy Palmiotti and Patrick Reynolds, who work on Deadly Tales, there are my one team that Jimmy came to us and said, I really prefer to work in full script. I want to write a full script with all dialogue, panel breakdowns, descriptions, and everything. And Patrick came on board as, I prefer working that way as well. I want to have an idea of what the writer wants so I can duplicate that vision. And then some artists don't want to work that way. Greg and Todd established it where Todd would give him very, very loose stuff. And I've only told the story a few times, but I went into Todd's office one day and I was like, hey, Brett, this is when Brett Booth was on Gunslinger Spawn. And I was like, Brett, the book's into printer. We're a week behind. Like, he needs plot. You have not sent him any plot. And he goes, oh, yeah, hold on. And Todd pulls out his phone and he calls up Brett, puts it on speakerphone. And he goes, Brett, what do you want to draw? That's how the conversation of here's what your next plot is. Brett, what do you want to draw? And Brett went, and if you look back, you can find this issue. It's in the first 12 issues of Gunslinger. And Brett goes, I want to draw a werewolf. But he's like a Frankenstein werewolf where he's all different colors, patches of werewolf and stitching and stuff. And Todd goes, that sounds cool. Give me 2 pages of Gunslinger on his motorcycle, trying to find a spot in the woods where he can set up camp. And then there's a shot of something in the bushes. It jumps out. It's the werewolf. He attacks Gunslinger. Give me a splash page of the werewolf howling behind the moon. Really awesome. Then he rips Gunslinger's arm off. Gunslinger's going to shoot him, get his arm back, and then run into the woods while he's trying to reattach his arm. And Brett goes, I got it. And he hangs up, and Todd turns to me and he goes, there you go. That's like 10 pages of plot. Write that up so I don't forget what I told Brett to do. And so then I had to type that up for the both of them. And that was literally how Todd writes an issue, because he trusts the artists so much. For most writers, that is a terrifying story. Because come on, let's be honest. It was a 4-minute phone conversation, but that was the first 10 pages of the issue.
That's amazing. That's what I love.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that process at all, people. At all.
I would have just said it's going to be in a snowstorm and they go into a very dark cave. That would have been an easier job. We have a couple of white pages, a couple of black pages, and throw some word balloons on. But what's amazing is with these conversations is we all know the pipeline. You have your story, you kind of break it down, and then it goes into to layout, inks, colors, lettering. But everyone's approach to those steps to the pipeline, it's so unique. That's what I love about it is we all know it's there and there's options and there's different pathways to it, but then we're free to find our own way. And I just love these conversations. Like it could be a phone call. Like the way you describe it is reminiscent to. I had a conversation last year with Elliot S. Magan, and he used to do a lot with Carrie Bates and Superman, and they would co-plot. And I was like, how did that go? How did 2 people write? And it would be one would record on a dictaphone and the other would type up then and stuff. This is back in the 70s and the 80s, but it's just curious. Everyone has their own unique process. But as you were saying, some should definitely come with a health warning, I suppose, where you'd be going in. But no, that's amazing. And thanks so much for all of that insight, Thomas. What I would like to do now is just try out to some of our students and members here who have already sent over a couple of questions. So I'm just going to go out in order of those who sent their questions over. So I'm just going to go to Diego first. Diego, if you want to come in and ask your questions.
So, first, I want to congratulate you, Thomas, on the great success of the 50-50-50 initiative of Spawn and 350 Spawn, all those records, all those high selling numbers, all that beautiful art. I love it.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, your company. I bought my first guitar because I translated comics of Spawn back way when, a few decades ago, and one of those comics was Skin. I'm so nervous. Sorry, Kiss Like a Circus, and I was wondering, is there any more like Kiss or crossovers like with Hellboy, maybe that you could tell us about?
Well, personally, I've said this for many years, and you're thinking the same thing as me. Hellboy and Spawn would be an absolute match made in hell. A great crossover. Right now, we did recently 2 years ago the Batman Spawn one again. So there's been three of those, and obviously there's a lot of people banging the drum for a Spawn Spider-Man one. But they want Todd to draw it. I don't really foresee that happening anytime soon. I'm never going to say never, but right now, what we're really trying to do is focus on the Spawn universe, and I don't feel that we have done a particularly good job, and this is on me and this is on Todd, on explaining why we expanded the Spawn universe. When we did all these new books, people were just like, oh, they're just looking for more money. But it's like our books were still the cheapest books on the market at $2.99. And the reason we did it was Todd was looking at Marvel and looking at DC going, there are fans of Marvel that go, I love the X-Men. And so I read all of the X-Men books, but I don't care what happens in Spider-Man, so that they don't read Spider-Man. Nobody reads every Marvel book or every DC book. And so what we were hoping to do was to say, hey, here's the universe that Spawn exists in, and here are other titles that have different feels. Maybe you're not a fan of the war, heaven with hell and religious and demons and stuff, but you like Red Dead Redemption, you like Western movies. We'll read Deadly Tales of the Gunslinger Spawn. Or I don't really care about Spawn or whatever, but my girlfriend loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Supernatural. Well, then have her read Black Ritual by Thomas Healy, because that's about a really badass chick who does magic and she's just trying to help the people in her life. So what we were trying to do is just expand the universe to go, not every book is for everybody. We don't expect you to read every book. Here's some variety. So you can go to your friends, your family, your loved ones and go, hey, try this. So yes, we have talked about some crossovers, and there might be some minor ones. Nothing big. If you've read any stuff from the Massive verse that Kyle Higgins is doing, like Supermassive and Rogue Sun, you'll notice a couple of issues ago, Medieval Spawn showed up. There is more to come of that story this coming year. So you might see some small ones, but as EIC down the road, I would love to work on a big crossover with some really interesting characters that I think people would fit together. And to me, it's not necessarily going to be Spawn and Spider-Man. Like, to me, if I'm in charge, I'm getting Spawn and I'm getting Hellboy and I'm getting John Constantine. And then only because I'm a fan, Detective Chimp shows up, because that's what I want. So nothing is in the works right now. I'm not insinuating or hinting anything, but yes, I would love to do something down the road.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Brilliant. Don't worry, Thomas. When I splice this up, there'll be a headline saying something's in the works. Don't worry. That's how this.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But no, thanks so much for the question, Diego. I'll go over to Craig now. Craig, if you want to come with your questions.
Yeah, hi. My questions are just in regards to the pitching process, and I'm just wondering two things. One, like, what would be the initial thing that jumps out at you when you're reading a pitch? And on top of that, then, like, recently, what would be some of the specific elements within pitches that, like, changed your mind with regards to, like, picking them up and bringing them to print? Like, what was the turning point for you?
Honestly, it's a great question, because I think a lot of people get too mired. Now, when you say pitch, are you referring to writing pitch or
Writing
pitching
pitch.
an art? Okay, writing pitch. Good. That's what I thought. A lot of people get a little bit too mired in me getting excited about the lore of their story. I get it. If you're pitching Spawn, I know the lore. I don't need the intricacies of how you're fitting this into something that was mentioned in issue 43. What I'm looking for, and what I know Todd's looking for, and that's why I'm looking for it, is, can you do good dialogue? First and foremost, you could have the most amazing idea ever. It could rival Dune in its epicness, but can you write good dialogue with the characters? Because that is what people are reading on the page. They're not reading your background lore. So having it sound realistic, and I'm not saying that every single book we have is perfect. Different writers do different things, but one of the things that we're looking for is Todd likes what he describes as realistic dialogue. I get that these are extraordinary creatures and beings in odd comics, but in odd costumes, but I still would like them to sound like real people talking. And we use movies a lot as an example when we're talking to writers, like Saving Private Ryan. When they're having those conversations at the end, they didn't sound like I'm a gung-ho soldier and pro-American. We're going to stop these horrible fascist Nazis. These were real dudes that were terrified, and they knew they weren't getting out of it. And was it worth it to save this one guy? Is it? And the other movie that I use all the time is Sicario. I always tell any of my writers, go watch Sicario, because again, those people in that movie could have been superheroes. Put a costume on it, they're Punishers, they're Daredevils, whatever. But the dialogue was really real. And if you've seen that movie, has everybody seen that movie? Or has anybody here seen that movie? Okay. There's a scene at the end where Benicio del Toro's character ends up at the drug dealer's house. And I won't describe what happens in the scene, but in a comic book, that could be a whole 2 or 3 pages of dialogue and monologue and boasting, and I'm here and you've destroyed so many lives and it's my job to stop you. That's not what he does. He says, you know why I'm here? And the guy says, yeah. And there's like 2 more lines and that scene's done, because that's the real world. He's not going to give a Red Skull speech. And the Red Skull speeches work in the Marvel universe. And in our universe, when I write Sam and Twitch, I want that to sound like Law and Order, SVU. I don't want that to sound like, comic book cops. So what I'm looking for when I'm reading pitches is stuff like that, the dialogue, because we can help shape your story to fit where we need it to fit in the Spawn universe. Now, that's a little different if you're pitching to, say, Image for a creator-owned project. They might look a little bit more at, does this lore support a 7-issue miniseries, and are people going to care? So take what I'm saying as a very specific type of thing for what we are looking for.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, no worries, Craig.
Oh, that's brilliant. And what a wonderful transition, because you mentioned Sicario, which our next question will come from Alistair, who actually brought that very film as an example up in class last year. I remember actually talking to me about it as well. So this is a great coincidence. So Alistair's up next with his question as well. If you want to come in, Alistair.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Brilliant. Fantastic. You've good taste in films.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've kind of an open-ended question anyway, because I would have had my first interactions with Spawn and the likes of them as McFarlane toys. It would have been, to me, it was the apex of pop culture. I thought that you couldn't go beyond like a 1-to-1 match of a comic and a toy. It just seemed like magic to me. But we're kind of in a maker crafter Jetsons future at the minute, where people are making toys at home that, like it or not, they're as good as what the big companies are doing. But in editorial, have you ever found that there's much interaction, because you'd be looking for consistency and cohesion across your character's appearance and stuff, and a lot of people draw the toys they have on their shelf as the first interaction with, a realistic looking character? But do you ever find that there are any editorial decisions that come up to where you'd ask an artist or ask a writer to include or maybe change something, because that character is going to be seen in high fidelity, sculpt somewhere under good lighting? Does that interaction come up for you? Because you're quite seen, like you're at the top of the chain when it comes to editorials. So
yes, actually, that happens often. So in the office that's in Phoenix, Arizona, McFarlane Toys is there as well. So we kind of share an office with them. So I am working with a lot of the toys people as well. They have another large office up in Canada, but I'm working with the toys people as well. So a lot of times when they're doing new Spawn line toys, they'll ask us for the art assets. And then I usually will write the little card, the collector cards, or, the history of the character. So I write all that. I write all the little bios and synopsises of the characters. But yes, there's been both good stuff and problems because of the toys and because of other references to the movies. And the most easy example to spot is, has anybody seen the 90s Spawn live action movie? I think it's a great movie for its time, and it has a killer soundtrack. John Leguizamo steals that movie. He is the best part of that movie. And fun aside is, Todd and John are still friends. They met on the set, and they are still friends that talk and hang out, which I think is just so fun. But if you look at Clown and you look at the way they did his clown makeup, it's wrong. And so we have a lot of people, when they want to do a version of Clown for a cover, they'll do a Google search and that always pops up. And if you look at John Leguizamo's Clown thing, the blue on his face goes around his eyes and kind of frames his face. And if you look at how Todd draws clowns, the mask, it's not a mask. It doesn't go through, or it doesn't go around his eyes. It actually cuts through the corner of his eyes. It just juts in just a little bit, because Todd felt that's more creepy than having him look like a blue faceplate. So things like that, we do absolutely then have to kick it back. Another big one is, for whatever reason, in issue 119, when they did this great double page spread, they introduced a character named Gunslinger Spawn. That was his first appearance. And Angel Medina was the artist on time, and he is phenomenal. And he drew a cowboy with this cool duster coat, but for whatever reason, he gave him this giant hat, this giant tall hat. So if you've ever seen Gunslinger, he's got a giant hat, and it just stuck. And so now we do have people that they'll give us covers and they'll try to diminish the hat a bit or make it more stylized. And we always have to go back, because it's like, Todd's like, no, we've established this. It has to be this big, tall, like stovepipe cowboy hat. And then he actually wrote, when he was working with Brett on Gunslinger, he actually wrote a little bit of a story that showed that Gunslinger keeps his knives in the hat. And they're these long, like chef knives that he throws. So that's why the hat's so tall, so it could fit all the knives. So when the toy stuff happens and people start doing stuff like that, and McFarlane Toys wants to do stuff, we go back and forth a lot with references. And there's a little known story where people assume that when Todd left Marvel, it was right after he co-created Venom, and then he started Spawn, and that's why Spawn has a symbiote. And that is not the case. Spawn was never supposed to have a symbiote. If you go, Todd created Spawn when he was 14. Spawn was never supposed to have a symbiote, but in the early days of Image, all of those creators were trying to get this company to work and do their books. So there were all kinds of delays. There were all kinds of errors. And people started calling out Todd and saying, hey, in this issue, the pouches are on Spawn's right leg, but in this issue, they're on the left. And then he only had 4 spikes on this gauntlet, but now he's got 6. Why? What's going on? And that's when Todd went, oh, it's a symbiote. So the costume changes. That's why. And he goes, because I couldn't remember from issue to issue where I was putting all the spikes. I just knew I wanted to draw the big ass dope cape, and I didn't care where the spikes went. And so I had to come up with a reason of why it changed from issue to issue. And that's why Spawn has a symbiote. Not because he was just going, well, I co-created Venom, so I'm going to do something similar. He had no plans on doing it. So Spawn, you can get away with a lot. If you look at Spawn, we let the artists have a lot of real open kind of ability to draw it. So if you look at somebody like Carlo Barberi, he draws a very classic superhero-esque version of Spawn. Beautiful. If you look at someone like Javi Fernandez, when he was doing his run on King Spawn, who's one of my favorite artists of all time on this book, he would draw Spawn really thin, and you could see his bones. He was almost emaciated. And when he drew his arms, he would draw them just a little bit too long. And when he opened his mouth, it opened a little bit too wide. So it was just weird enough to be creepy, and to let you and the character that it was interacting with, Spawn, know he's not human. He's not a guy in a suit. There's something horrible about him. And that's kind of where Spawn gets to be. But some of the other characters, they're not as old, so we do kind of have a hard and fast rule on how to do it. Clown being one of them. Redeemer, there's a very specific look, and there's a very specific blue that we use for Redeemer, and Todd calls it Cubs blue because he's a baseball fan. So if you look at the Chicago Cubs, they have a really kind of like royal blue, and Todd's always like, I want that to be Cubs blue. So stuff like that. But yes, I agree with you. The maker culture has changed quite a bit, and I believe it hasn't necessarily affected the comics as much, but I do believe it's affected McFarlane Toys a bit. A lot of people were, getting third-party capes that had cloth and wires so they could make the cape flow, and it's not a chunk of plastic. And now we've started doing that with some of the toys. So the maker culture, I do think, can be a positive force in artistic endeavors, because it kind of lets the creators know where maybe some of their fan base wants to go.
Oh, that's fantastic. Just before we wrap up, I just want to see if anyone else wants to come with any questions at all. make sure I think I got everyone who sent in. I haven't missed anyone, have I? No, perfect. And then I suppose then, Thomas, what's coming up at the moment that you're able to talk about, and where can folks follow just to see for the latest? Is there a particular social media page you guys like to promote, or is there a particular newsletter that they can subscribe to?
Yeah, I'm pretty much at Thomas Healy, one word, everywhere. Instagram is where I'm at the most. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I like photos with my complaints about the world. So, and photos of my tea that I'm drinking. I just switched over to Irish tea due to
Oh,
Reese Hannigan complaining that I was drinking improper British tea.
are you
Uh,
drinking Barry's Alliance?
I don't remember what it is. My wife just picked
Oh.
it up for me, but it's delicious. I will shoot you an email. I will let you know what I'm drinking. I just finished a cup actually.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah, and also on Instagram and on, I believe, Threads and on Blue Sky is McFarlane Comics Official. That's where a lot of the comic news, that's where we do the cover reveals. And then I believe if you go to spawn.com or McFarlaneToys.com, McFarlane.com, we do have a newsletter that's run by the wonderful people in our PR department that comes out. And then you can follow a lot of stuff. Image has its own newsletter as well. But as far as new stuff coming out, I'm really excited. The solicit for She Spawn #1, written by Gail Simone, is going to be going live in, I think, 2 weeks. So
Awesome.
you'll see the first stuff for there. Brett Booth did an incredible variant cover for that, which I'm very, very excited to show. And then within the next couple of months, you're going to start seeing the first stuff, because it was teased well over a year ago. Spawn 77, which is a Spawn story based on the original design of Spawn that Todd did as a child in 1977. It was not the same character. It was a very different character. And him and an artist named Mark Spears are working on a 3-issue miniseries that's going to be looking into that version of the Spawn character. And then as we approach San Diego Comic-Con, we'll have a bunch of new stuff to announce. And then I can't say what it is, but there's going to be a fairly big announcement coming towards the end of this month about the 4 Spawn Core Universe books, and some interesting changes to those, including a new book that I will be writing.
Oh, fantastic. So can't wait to find out more. And San Diego, that must be like a whole beast unto itself as well. I always say, I've never been, I've made it to New York, but San Diego intimidates me too much to go over
I'm
to
going to
see.
tell you, my unpopular opinion is that New York is, man, that's my favorite show. I love New York. San Diego is, it's a job. It's a job. It's work. It's a ton of, and it's just so spread out and so big, but everybody's there. So, you have to be there. You have to be there. But I'm looking forward to hopefully hitting up some of the smaller conventions in and around the world to get to meet some new people. And again, one of my favorite things is going to shows like this. I did Portsmouth in England last year, and running into both writers and artists and that don't have the exposure because maybe they're not in the US and they don't get to go to the big shows, and going, holy crap, like this is amazing. I need to get you on something, or you should be doing covers. And so doing portfolio reviews at smaller shows like that is one of my favorite parts of the job.
Awesome. That's amazing. And hopefully, as I was saying, hopefully we'll catch you over here in the future. Definitely. Like between now there's a show in Cork, and of course, the lads as well, and there's a show in Dublin. Hopefully our paths will cross over here someday.
Hopefully.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Thomas. This has been amazing, and really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And best of luck with everything ahead.
Thank you all very much for having me, and good luck for all of your endeavors. And I hope to hopefully I get to send you guys a contract soon and be like, hey, you're working for us now. Hopefully we'll see that.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.